The story of American armor begins in the most unlikely place, the farm. What started as simple agricultural machinery, hastily adapted for battle, slowly transformed through decades of innovation. With every war and every lesson learned, these machines evolved into some of the most lethal tracked vehicles ever built. This is the complete journey through every generation of United States battle tanks. World War I and early interwar era. Early experiments. CLB-75 prototype. The CLB-75 was little more than a farm tractor wrapped in steel. Engineers bolted an armored shell onto an agricultural chassis, creating something that looked more like a moving shipping container than a weapon of war. It was crude, slow, and never meant for real combat, but it represented America's first tentative steps into armored warfare. Holt gas-electric tank. America's first serious tank attempt came in the form of the Holt gas-electric. This ambitious design combined a gasoline engine with electric motors, a concept far ahead of its time. Unfortunately, its massive weight proved disastrous. In muddy World War I terrain, the tank simply sank, unable to maneuver effectively in battlefield conditions. Skeleton tank. The skeleton tank was one of the strangest designs ever conceived. Built from hollow iron tubing, it featured a massive open frame with minimal armor. The goal was to reduce weight while allowing the tank to cross wide trenches without getting stuck. While innovative, its unconventional structure limited its practical combat potential. Ford 3-ton M1918. The Ford 3-ton M1918 was designed to be the Model T of tanks, small, cheap, and produced in huge numbers. Intended for swarm tactics, these tiny vehicles were meant to overwhelm enemy positions through sheer volume. However, the war ended before they could be deployed in meaningful numbers. First operational designs. M1917 Light Tank Series. The M1917 marked America's first truly operational tank. Based on the French Renault FT, it became the foundation of early U.S. armored doctrine. Though it arrived too late to influence World War I, it remained in service for years afterward, helping train crews and shape future tank development. Mark 8 Liberty. The Mark 8 Liberty was a massive joint project between the United States and Britain. Its elongated hull allowed it to cross wide trenches with ease, but that same size created serious logistical problems. Transporting, maintaining, and supplying such a large vehicle proved extremely difficult. M1921 Medium Tank. The M1921 represented a critical leap forward. It introduced a fully rotating turret, a defining feature of modern tanks. This design shift moved American armor away from awkward hull-mounted weapons and toward the standard layout used by tanks ever since. M1922 Medium Tank. An evolution of the M1921, the M1922 experimented with a complex wire and pulley suspension system. While it promised a smoother ride over rough terrain, the reality was far less impressive. Maintenance was constant, and field crews struggled to keep the system operational. Interwar period. Experimental innovation. T1 Light Tank Series. The T1 series explored speed and mobility as core battlefield advantages. These tanks were fast for their time and ideal for reconnaissance, but that speed came at the cost of armor protection, leaving them vulnerable in real combat scenarios. Christie M1919. Designed by the legendary Walter Christie, this tank could operate either on tracks or wheels. On roads, it reached incredible speeds, shocking military observers. Despite its performance, the Army considered the design too radical and ultimately rejected it. T2 Medium Tank. The T2 was a boxy, heavily armed experiment that tried to combine firepower and protection. Unfortunately, its engine couldn't handle the weight, leaving it underpowered and unreliable, ultimately ending its development. M1931 Christie. The M1931 showcased Christie's revolutionary suspension system, allowing tanks to move at unprecedented speeds across rough terrain. This design would influence armored forces around the world, including future Soviet tanks. M1 Light Tank/Combat Car. To bypass legal restrictions on tanks, the Army labeled these vehicles combat cars. Designed for cavalry units, they prioritized speed and scouting over armor, serving as fast-moving reconnaissance platforms. M2 Light Tank Series. The M2 series was the direct ancestor of the famous Stuart tanks. Early models featured multiple turrets, reflecting outdated design thinking. Later versions refined the layout into a more practical single-turret configuration. T4 medium tank. The T4 adopted Christie suspension to maximize road speed. While it performed well on highways, muddy terrain exposed its weaknesses, limiting its battlefield usefulness.
T7 combat car.
This wheeled vehicle focused entirely on speed. While impressive on flat ground, its lack of versatility made it unsuitable for frontline combat. M2 medium tank series. Armed primarily with machine guns, the M2 medium was more of a learning platform than a true combat vehicle. Despite its limitations, it played a vital role in shaping future medium tank designs. Marmon Harrington CTLS. Built largely for export, the CTLS was small, lightly armed, and inexpensive. It wasn't powerful, but its simplicity made it easy to produce and maintain during the chaotic early years of war. World War II era. Light and medium tanks. M3 Stuart Honey. Fast, reliable, and agile, the M3 Stuart became a favorite reconnaissance tank. British crews nicknamed it Honey because of its smooth handling and dependable performance throughout the war. MTLS 1G14. This unusual tank featured two main guns mounted in a single turret. Originally built for export, it saw little combat use and was mostly relegated to training roles. CTMS. Another export-focused design, the CTMS was a lightweight tank that never found a clear role within U.S. forces, seeing only limited service. M3 Lee/Grant. The M3 Lee was an awkward stopgap solution, mounting its main gun in the hull instead of the turret. Though tall and vulnerable, it delivered desperately needed firepower at a critical moment in the war. M4 Sherman. The Sherman became the backbone of Allied armored forces. It wasn't the most powerful tank, but it excelled in reliability, ease of repair, and sheer numbers. Its mass production ultimately overwhelmed enemy forces. Heavy and experimental tanks. M6 Heavy Tank. America's first true heavy tank was massive and heavily armed. Unfortunately, its extreme weight made it impractical as many bridges couldn't support it. T7/M7 Medium. Originally intended as a light tank, the T7 gained weight throughout development until it became a medium tank. Unable to outperform the Sherman, the project was cancelled. T20/T22/T23 series. These experimental tanks introduced advanced transmissions and lower profiles. Though never mass-produced, they directly influenced post-war American armor. M5 Stuart. An improved version of the Stuart, the M5 used twin Cadillac engines for greater reliability. Its speed and mechanical simplicity kept it useful long after heavier tanks dominated the battlefield. M22 Locust. Designed to be carried into battle by gliders, the M22 sacrificed armor for lightness. While innovative, its thin protection left it vulnerable once deployed. T-14 Heavy Tank. A joint U.S.-British assault tank project, the T-14 prioritized armor over speed. Ultimately, it was abandoned when mobility proved more valuable. M24 Chaffee. The M24 Chaffee was a major leap forward for light tanks. Armed with a 75mm gun and featuring excellent suspension, it performed effectively in both scouting and combat roles. Late war heavy tanks. M26 Pershing. Arriving late in the war, the Pershing finally gave U.S. forces a tank capable of challenging German Tigers head-on. Its design proved highly influential. T-26E4 Super Pershing. The T-26E4, better known as the Super Pershing, was an emergency response to one urgent problem. America needed a tank that could reliably defeat Germany's heaviest armor. Engineers took the standard Pershing and mounted an extremely long, high-velocity gun originally designed from anti-aircraft components. This gave the Super Pershing exceptional armor-piercing power, capable of engaging Tiger II tanks at long range. However, the massive cannon dramatically shifted the tank's balance forward, putting heavy strain on the suspension and turret mechanism. To compensate, crews welded additional armor plates to the rear of the turret as counterweights. Only a single Super Pershing saw limited combat near the end of World War II, but it proved that the Pershing platform had far greater potential. The lessons learned from this rushed but powerful experiment directly influenced post-war American heavy tank development. T-28/T-95. The T-28, later redesignated as the T-95, was less a conventional tank and more a moving bunker. It was designed to break through heavily fortified enemy defenses, particularly concrete fortifications like the German Siegfried Line. To survive direct hits, the vehicle was wrapped in extremely thick armor, making it one of the heaviest armored vehicles ever built by the United States. That protection came at a serious cost: speed. The T-28 was incredibly slow and cumbersome, requiring 4 separate tracks to distribute its massive weight and prevent it from sinking into the ground. It lacked a rotating turret, instead mounting its powerful gun directly in the hull, further limiting flexibility. Only a handful of prototypes were built, and it never saw combat, but the T-28 demonstrated the extreme trade-offs between protection, mobility, and firepower in armored warfare. T-29 Heavy Tank. The T-29 heavy tank was developed as America's answer to the most formidable German armor of World War II, particularly the feared Tiger II. Built on lessons learned from the Pershing, the T-29 featured a massive, heavily armored turret and a powerful long-barreled gun designed to destroy enemy heavy tanks at extended ranges. Its thick frontal armor provided strong protection against contemporary anti-tank weapons, while the enlarged turret allowed for improved crew ergonomics and fire control. Although the T-29 arrived too late to see combat, it served as an invaluable test platform in the post-war years. The technologies proven on the T-29, including turret design, suspension improvements, and firepower concepts, directly influenced many American heavy tank projects during the early Cold War. T-30 Heavy Tank. Armed with a massive 155mm gun, the T-30 focused on demolishing hardened enemy positions.